the only master of this country. Those who are not pure Turkish origin will only have one right in Turkey, the right to be servant and slave. Until 1991, ladies and gentlemen, Kurds continue to be official as a classified among the Kurds. At the session of Council of Europe in 1986, Turkish Foreign Minister, Foreign Affairs, Turan Güneş warned the Kurds as such. This is very well documented in European archive. If you have a courage then claim the independence, that he was telling to Kurds. We will fight. If you think you can defeat and most powerful army in the Europe, the Turkish army, go ahead and allow me to add this. If a number of countries like West Germany, France and England exhibit a little tolerance toward us, we wouldn't have any trouble liquidating few million Kurds. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to go through all of this, but as you see, through all just historical crime in Mexico, 1925, Sheikh Zayed Rebellion, from 1937 to 38, that's in Mexico, was one of horrific. And the latest one, Roboski, as you all know, Roboski, Mexico, and the Turkish operation on Cizre, Nusaybin, Ahmed and Gever between 2015 and 2016. According to United Nations, the latest on 19 March 2017, Turkish military and police force have killed thousands of people during the operation against the Kurdish people in southern Kurdistan, and listed a summary of killing, torture, rape, and widespread destruction of property, among them are human rights. Again, same by Mazlum Dar, one of the human rights organizations within Turkey, confirmed that. It stated that from December 2015 to March 2016, there was a blanket curfew imposed on Cizre, which lasted 78 days. All entire town were completely blackout during this period. The report stated that as a result of this operation, 200 to 260 people killed. In same day, Russian TV reported in the city of Cizre, 150 people were burned alive in basement by Turkish military forces. Some corpses were found without head. Of course, since establishment, as John's mentioned, of this arbitrary and borders with Psycho-Pico, there are external factors that affect the Kurdish cause and Kurdish freedom movement. And this external form is an issue that seems, the Kurdish issue is no longer a Middle East issue, but as a rather international. As that Kurdistan has been under, I consider it as a full embargo on the international community. I break down embargo in such a different section. Political embargo. Listing Kurdish political party, namely PKK, as terrorists in order to limit the Kurdish influence in the world affair. I believe few will go on that. And there are some continuing our struggle. We don't want to go in that details. But just briefly, you all know who is PKK and what fighting for. You know that PKK represents majority of the Kurdish people in all parts of Kurdistan. The fact is, the PKK today is major fight against, believe it or not, or even the international allies, they can ignore it. But the reality is PKK is major partner fight against ISIS. And the liquidation of ISIS in Rojava, in Syria, in Iraq was thanks to PKK. And one of the heroic efforts of 100,000 Yazidi that saved in Shangal Mountain. This legendary cannot be ignored. But also the other factors are, as we put in our list during the parliamentary intelligence session, listing PKK had put our Kurdish people and diaspora in the great risk, as well as our activists. And I can say full details how can be worse, and I will go about it a bit later. But simple example, for example, today here in Melbourne, in heart of Swanston Street, one Islamic communities, with all respect, with all faith or religion, can easily put our table and exercise their right to talk about profit and talk about some charity. But imagine there are 100,000 our people are the camp without basic things, and we are there to go there and put our time to ask for charity and ask for help for displaced people. Economical embargo. Economical embargo, one of the great things that affected Kurdish revolution. All trade, as you know, on all part of Kurdistan done by occupiers. Destruction of the nature, environment, and mining industry has destroyed entire Kurdish. The fact is, entire Kurdistan resource has been dried up. Culture, an important element, has been sold worldwide. In every part of Kurdistan, there is a clear distinction between Kurdish town and city and other region. There is a decade gap between Istanbul and all. For example, if I'm keen to know, this is not criticism of our Australian government, but that's the reality that's hard beating, and we convent to ask this question. Imagine Australia trade with these countries. Question is, what portion of this go to Kurdish population in Turkey, in Syria, and Iraq, and Rojava? I dare to say, but if it's no exaggeration, I would say 0 to 9. What more tragic, stateless Kurds in Rojava and Bakur cannot even support from humanitarian organization without Turkey or Syrian regime approval. As I mentioned, 260,000 Afghan refugees alone, and plus the other 100,000, they are in very harsh condition. And without any effort or support. We also have in our cities in Jizre and Gever that have 1,100. Before I go to the next section, you cannot ignore the fact of Kurds to protect themselves. Kurds in all battle has been very effective in organizing themselves. But due to international barriers, air raid, air embargo, sky, to protect themselves, without the Kurds, to put in this, Kurds cannot protect themselves in the ground without protecting their sky. It's a reality. During the Afrin battle, as John mentioned, Turkey and jihadis would have, their battle would have not been, they could not invade Afrin without support the latest fighter jets. 300 jets was involved in nearly 3 months operation. And as you know, YPG and YPA had to leave Afrin city. It would be massive kill. Nobody would care, nobody would ask. As you see, as I mentioned, Jizre, the picture of Jizre is like a Second World War II. It's worse than Hamas city in Rojava. But no one had ever talked about the genocide and destruction happened in northern Kurdistan. So what we see in Rojava, in Syria, is a picture actually coming within the two. The same thing as we look at it, the situation of the latest changes that South Kurdistan tried to go to a referendum, betrayed and manipulated by Turkish government, taking the wrong decision, and in few days operation they lost 43% of South Kurdistan land, I believe. And while American airplane was in front of Kirkuk, imagine American government, US, how much hostile to Iranian government it is. Iranian Shia militia with all tanks crossing, entering Kirkuk, but they did not intervene. That was the best ever American could have decided to attack Iran for their hostility, but they didn't do it because it's come to Kurds now. I quote from Neil Ferguson in 2006 book, The War of World, he wrote, this is interesting because entire uprising, rebellion of Kurdistan has been crashed due to air bombardment. And the air bombardment not just happened by these things, but in 1920 in Wikipedia, and there is clear identification, first time British government to create the arbitrary borders of the Iraqi government, used the combination of aerial bombardment of gas against the Kurdish rebellion in South Kurdistan. Now, I like